Once you've figured out what it is you want to do, yeah, I come back to the prototype mentality. Having a mindset of prototyping your design, right? So you want to, above all, avoid the typical pitfall of copy and paste, right? And you want to test your design, your first design, against the contextual realities and against the people. So once you've decided your what, right, you kind of need to go into the place where you want to do your what, be it water, be it health, food security, whatever, and speak to the people you are going to help and to other people who have a role to play in the contextual reality, in the place, right? Be it authorities, businessmen, or whatever. Okay, so because here you're looking for a reaction, yeah? A lot of people say, you don't want to do that because you raise expectations and stuff like that. I think that's basic nonsense. People aren't children, and they can understand explanations, and they will have their reactions. Maybe they'll be annoyed or whatever if you don't do what you say you're going to do. But if you explain to people the whys and whats of your decisions, then you're treating them like adults, and they are adults, right? So once you've decided, okay, imagine I'm going to do wash, I haven't exactly decided how I'm going to do it yet, but I know that's what I'm going to do. The best thing to do is to have an initial idea of the how, right? But not a very formulated one, and go and check what are the reactions to you doing wash, yeah? Gather information about what people think of a wash intervention in the first place, right? Because this will give you a lot of information about people's motivation, people's prioritization. Do they think it's important? Do they not? Right? And then that will help you with your design, because again, you're and obviously asking them what ideas they have, if they do think it's a pertinent, because this is what you're trying to gauge, right? You're trying to understand if your intervention on wash is pertinent. It's urgent for them, for the people you're going to do it for, right? You need to know what they think of that, because, as I keep saying, if they don't think it's a priority or an urgency, you will have problems in the implementation phases, okay? So you're trying to gauge a lot of things here: motivation, participation, active, passive, resistances, reluctances, etc. when you speak to people about what your idea of an intervention is to do, right? So you're in the prototype mentality, right? And you use this feedback then to improve the what, okay? Also, by doing this engagement with the communities and the actors, you will see who is enthusiastic and who is resistant, right? Because this will give you valuable information on possible blockers and obstacles versus enablers and facilitators when it comes to your design, because you need to be able to solve as many problems as possible in the design phase, not in the implementation phase, right? And that means anticipating problems. So by checking these reactions from the different communities in the connect that people have about your intervention or your potential intervention is key, right? It gives you a lot of very useful information. Obviously, if you're in an armed conflict situation or a context with a lot of criminality, armed criminality, you need to be aware, because you're bringing resources into a resource-scarce environment, and there will be people who gain from your intervention and people who lose from your intervention. This can be from a financial status, from a livelihood perspective, from a status. So you have to look at those things, right? Because maybe by my intervention, will displace other actors who were gaining in some way from the provision of water to the same people that you're trying to provide water to, right? And maybe it was a business for somebody or whatever. You have to be checking this, yeah, because potential clashes of vested interests will cause you problems and perhaps security issues further down the line if you haven't noticed them or you're not aware of them and you haven't analyzed them. Okay, this is the very first stage of your design, right? To get these reactions. Often we rush through this, and if you rush through this phase, these different steps in a design, you will be delayed for sure in your implementation. So it is better to spend more time in the design decision-making process, knowing that you're prototyping and that you will be fine-tuning, then to rush through it to start implementing as fast as possible, and then experience a myriad of delays in your implementation phase, right? So it makes sense to spend more time on your design and prototype. Yeah, and we'll talk about prototyping your implementation in the next videos. Another thing that's very important when you're kind of talking about your intervention with different people, different communities that are going to be affected in one way or another, apart from judging by their reactions and what they say, is also what are the questions they ask? What are the other things they say? Because often in their questions is a lot of information, no? So if you're talking about water, but they're talking about something else a lot and asking about health, then you will see that, okay, somehow the priorities, they're more interested in health, right? So you need to check what's happening in health and is there somebody going to do health or all these things, right? Because you need to be able to feel, apart from your own intervention, of course, you need to be analyzing other people's interventions, not just NGOs in your cluster or outside of the cluster, but who is providing what, in what way, for what people, because you're not acting in a vacuum, right? There'll be other things. In most contexts that you operate in, if you're operating health, for example, there would be people who are offering health services, either free or for money, yeah, private clinics or traditional healers or whatever, yeah. People have been coping and managing for many, many years before we arrive on the scene. So we need to understand all of that, because when we engage in an intervention, we're not only bringing, as I said before, impact for the people we're trying to bring impact, but we're also bringing about a change, right? So I think it's a bit like we have to think about like a key to a door analogy, right? Our intervention is kind of like a key that either fits well into the lock of the door, or you have to force it in. So if we think of our intervention like in a key and the place as the door, we're trying to have a smooth entry, right? With as little ripple effects as possible. And that happens in the design phase. And that happens by really understanding and analyzing where it is you're going to be putting your key. And what other keys, what other interventions and players, let's say, what other players are there in the game that are going to have an effect on your intervention, on your game, right? So you have to look at the whole picture. Yeah, and also look at the ethical considerations at every step as well of what am I doing? How's that going to affect this? How's that going to affect them? How's it going to affect, ripple effects, very important.